Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Executive Subcommittee of the Learning and Families Committee of Monday, the 29th of August 2022. Very welcome. Do we have any apologies, Danny, please?
Yes.
Substitutions?
Yes, thanks, Convener. We just have one substitution. Councillor Leishman is substituting for Provost McDade.
Thank you, Danny. Do we have any declarations of interest from members, please? None at all, so that's good, thank you. Can we approve the minute of the meeting of the Executive Subcommittee of Lifelong Learning as it was of the 21st of March 2022? Thank you. I'm quite sure why. Yes, I think that is why I looked at you, Caroline, thank you. And the item 4 is the standards and quality in schools, learning communities and preschool centres take care of children. And I think Sharon is going to say a few words about that. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, Committee. I'm delighted to introduce this report on the standards and quality in schools, learning communities and preschool centres and daycare of children. This report reports on inspection activity since the last time that we met as a committee, which was on the 20th of January 2022. And with regard to the inspections that have taken place, with regards to Education Scotland, no formal inspections of schools by Education Scotland have in fact taken place. However, they are going to return to a formal inspection process from the 5th of September. However, Education Scotland did undertake a number of recovery visits, and these were arranged on a voluntary basis where ELC centres and schools were volunteering to take part in these, and a number of those visits took place within Perth and Kinross. And so there are details of those recovery visits and the key themes that were notified from Education Scotland around the strengths and areas for improvement, and they are sitting in section 5.1 of this report. We had 4 ELC settings and 2 primary schools who did volunteer for those visits. Section 5.2 of the report, though, provides details of the inspections carried out in ELC settings by the Care Inspectorate in Perth and Kinross since January 22. And the committee will know that the Care Inspectorate have continued to undertake inspections throughout the pandemic, and therefore we've been continuously reporting on the results of those inspections. So there were a total of 4 carried out PKC since January, and 1 report is being brought to committee today as an exception. Committee members will know that exception reports are coming if any report is either weak or unsatisfactory or indeed excellent. And I'm delighted to say that the report that we're presenting in Appendix 1 of today's report is an exception because of an excellent report, and that is for Balhousie and Northmuirton Nursery. So there's a range of information within the report. Bernadette Scott is here, Service Manager for Early Years, and she's here to provide an overview of the inspection activity and the performance summary for all ELC settings. And then Annie Carr, our Quality Improvement Officer, is also here to provide an overview of the exception report in Appendix 1.
Thank you, Sharon. Ben, please.
Good morning. As Sharon said, Care Inspector have continued their activity, and we've since January, which was the last committee, we've had 4 inspections, and we are bringing Balhousie Northmuirton reports by exception today. But on the whole, I would want to highlight to committee today that there is an improving picture in Perth and Kinross, that we currently sit with almost all of our funded providers, that's local authority settings, private, third sector, not-for-profit, and our childminders, sitting in the sort of 95% of good and above. So it is an improving picture, which I'm pleased to report, and I'm going to pass to Annie Carr to give more detail now on the Balhousie and Northmuirton excellent grading.
Thanks very much, Ben, and we're delighted to have Annie here. I know, as Councillor Shires will, over the years, that if somebody gets an excellent, it's because you are excellent. So delighted to have you here, Annie, please.
Thank you. So the setting was visited by a team of inspectors from the Care Inspectorate on the 28th of February this year. Virtual feedback was given on the 4th of March and was attended by the senior management team at Balhousie and North Muirton, and also an education support officer from our team. Inspectors found much to praise and with high ratings in all 4 key areas of assessment. So under quality of care and support, they were graded a 6, which is excellent. The inspectors considered that the quality of care and support was excellent and performance was seen to be sector leading. Published as part of the report, one parent commented, "Staff have been outstanding in their support throughout this time, and the commitment from them to help my child to do their best has been incredible. The service's exceptional links with other agencies and strong partnership working were also reported to be highly responsive to the needs of the children." The quality of the environment was graded at very good. Significant strengths were found in the environment of the service, where children were highly engaged in stimulating play and learning both indoors and out. Inspectors requested the permission of the setting to record the outdoor environment in photographic and video form to share as an example of high quality provision with other settings. The quality of staffing was also graded at very good, and it was reported that children consistently received an outstanding level of care and support from the staff, who were kind, caring and nurturing, and they knew them extremely well, enabling strong and trusting relationships. The quality of staffing was further praised for the warm, compassionate approach that was taken, with the staff working well as a team, keen to do all they could to improve outcomes for all the children in their care and to support the inclusive ethos of the setting. And finally, in management and leadership, they were also graded a 5, very good. And in the report, it states that the strong leadership team resulted in staff who had high aspirations and the confidence in their own capacity to support children and families to reach their full potential. A strong focus on improvement to support high quality outcomes for all children and their families was also noticed in the management and leadership of the service. Regular monitoring and self-assessment helped to identify areas for improvement and supported the staff with the capacity to work with their children and families. At feedback, the collaborative work between ourselves and the service was highlighted as contributing to the progress made by the setting over such a short period of time. And now, as we plan the transition to the new Riverside campus, the early years team, we continue to support the setting to engage with that strategic and operational planning. We've got resourcing and staffing to support and ensure a smooth transition for the children and their families.
Thanks very much for that, Annie, much appreciated. Just before we go to questions, just a brief comment about why we're sitting up here. In the previous council for executive subcommittees, we had a nice, very collegiate square, which was really nice actually, but my understanding is because of the way the chamber is now set up for hybrid meetings, that's difficult, so my apologies for that. We will just deal with that and we'll get on with it. Given the nature of executive subcommittees, I'm quite happy, with the exception of Councillor Barrett, who's online, rather than necessarily sticking a Q or a C in the chat. I'm quite happy for you just to wave at me if that's acceptable to members, with the exception of Councillor Barrett. So are there any questions for either Annie or Ben or Shan? Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Convener. I think before you said that, both myself and Councillor Barrett had put Qs in the chat because we had just followed the normal procedure. So just to stack up that Liz is looking to put questions forward also.
I do have the chat here, but thank you though, Councillor Shires, appreciate it.
I had questions on the main report rather than on Balhousie North Muirton, but I've got comments to make about Balhousie North Muirton, so I don't know how you want to take that. Okay. So the report, thank you very much for the report, Sharon, and the commentary that you gave along with it. My query was about the kind of process that went around the schools in particular that put themselves forward. Did an appeal go out saying anybody up for this? Were they the only 4 that put themselves forward? What was the process? And also it talked about the feedback to the schools. Was that oral, written? Was there a two-way conversation about that, or how did that work?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question, Councillor Shires. Indeed, what did happen was, I'm just making sure that everybody can hear me. What did happen was that Education Scotland did put out a general request for volunteers across all local authorities in Scotland. Within the Perth and Kinross situation, there were indeed other schools who did volunteer to take part in the voluntary recovery visits. Education Scotland have got a master plan, if you like, in terms of how they resume their inspection activity from the 5th of September. And so they did say that not all schools who applied would be considered for the recovery visits, partly because of their timeframes and their capacity to do them, and perhaps because there were perhaps other schools who might be receiving a more formal visit at some point in the future. So we actually did have, I think, 2 secondary schools who had also applied to take part in a voluntary visit, but these were the schools that the Education Scotland team agreed to come and visit. When they did come, they looked at some paperwork. It was a very paperwork light process in comparison to normal processes. However, each of our schools did work with their quality improvement officers to tell their story of recovery, if you like, and that was what the inspection teams were really keen to hear about. What happened then was that they spoke to parents, they spoke to pupils, they spoke to staff, and they then provided what was called a note of visit, a NOV, which is not a published report, but it was a report that gave the school some feedback on the considerations of Education Scotland team. And that's really what we've reported here, some of the main themes behind that. So I think that's answered all your questions. Thank you.
Councillor Shires.
If I might, that's really helpful, and well done to those schools that were willing to volunteer, because I imagine that was, sort of brave decision to make of everything that they had going on, as well as put themselves up for an inspection visit. Did other local authorities, do we know what the percentage was of primary schools that were visited to secondaries? Is that published information, or?
We're not aware of that. I presume that will be forthcoming, because they were actually doing inspection visits right through. They were still completing their paperwork from August. So it's something that we can certainly ask our Education Scotland colleagues for and bring back to committee, though.
My final question, if I may. Obviously, this goes back to a theme that we've explored over the past 5 years of this committee, and that is the irregular nature of inspections. I think we would all want to see more regular inspections. I can think of one primary school close to my heart where it was inspected. So a child that I know went 7 years of primary school, she's now in 6th year at secondary school, and the last inspection that school had was the year before that child started in P1. There have been a succession of head teachers and so much change in that time, and that school's not been re-inspected, and I would expect it would come out really well of an inspection, but that process, and I know their ELAV visits take place on a regular basis, and that's to be welcome, but that external eye is something that is very much welcomed. We have requested that someone from the system, that one of the inspectors came to this committee, and we're hoping that can happen soon, because there are questions about the whole process, and admittedly COVID has been a challenge, but that shouldn't get away from what needs to be done, and very much welcome that these schools were visited, and the process sounds really good. Thank you.
Shan, please.
Yeah, thank you, convener. In relation to your query about the Education Scotland representatives being invited to this committee, Councillor Shires, you have been seeking that for quite some time. I would just report that we did invite Education Scotland to this committee. They weren't able to take part, but we have asked them to come to the next committee. We're still awaiting a response from Education Scotland, but we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Councillor Barrett with a question, please.
Thank you, convener. I have a few questions, but they're all around the same theme. I'm looking at the table from page 28 onwards about previous inspections and gradings. Just looking for clarification. A few of them looked as if they could do with a bit of support to improve, particularly I'm looking at City of Perth ELC, Muirton Community Nursery, and both of them were 2019, and the Thrive Childcare and Education inspection in 2021. I just wondered if there's any update on progress there, please.
Ben, please.
Yes, Councillor Barrett. Where we have settings that receive an adequate or less, we have what we call a situation where the setting works with us on an improvement plan, and that is identified recommendations from the Care Inspectorate that go into that plan, but also some of our own local intelligence about what the setting might need to help them to make that journey of improvement. And all of our settings who have those gradings or below are on those improvement plans, and the early years team work very closely, and we are committed to making sure that these settings do progress and that we have a level of confidence that when the inspectors come around again, that the grades will be 4 or above.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Bern. Thanks for all your team are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If those are all the questions, I think we're formally asked to note this report, and then I'll come to comments, if that's okay. Thank you. Councillor Barrett, first with comments, please.
Well, I wanted first to give many thanks to Sharon, Bern, Annie and their teams for this report, and many congratulations to Balhousie and North Muirton ELC for their excellent report on daycare of children, keeping up their great track record on this. This isn't a one-off. I note especially the care and sensitivity shown by staff in looking after the children and their families, and thank you to everyone who's helped to achieve this. I'm also welcoming the summary in Appendix 2, which shows Perth and Kinross Council are ahead for both comparator local authorities and the rest of the country on all quality indicators. And this is reinforced in our next paper 6 for this meeting. And again, I'd like to thank everyone involved in this great record.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Well said. Councillor Shires, please.
Thank you, convener, and basically second what Councillor Barrett said. I'm sure this report will have not come as a surprise to those that are close to that particular setting. The dedication of the staff in particular is very noteworthy and something we're all well aware of. And I just hope that staff will take our gratitude as for all the good work that they do, and obviously we're all very excited to see their new home at Riverside, and imagine what they can do when they get into that brand new fantastic setting. So well done and congratulations to all involved.
Here, Councillor Shires, thank you. Councillor Leishman with a comment, please.
Yes, thank you, convener, and thank you to all the staff for the report. My comment is very much an echo of my fellow previous councillors. I'd like to commend and congratulate Balhousie and North Muirton ELC on the report from the Care Inspectorate. Credit must go to the staff for creating a fun, joyful and inclusive environment where the children feel valued and listened to. Staff being so invested in the children's personal plans to meet their specific needs is crucial, and the fact that the children and their families feel genuinely cared for shows that staff obviously treat their work as more than just a job. Children being empowered to learn through playing and therefore being encouraged to focus on creativity and positive relationship building is so important, and what the staff have done to promote this is excellent. I'm also delighted to hear that the children have such good access to outdoor play and learning. I believe that many schools are now embracing this and embedding outdoor learning experiences into the early learning, and the curriculum for excellence suggests that outdoor learning is effective in building better health. So ultimately, well done to everyone at the team at Balhousie and North Muirton ELC. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Leishman. I would just like to add briefly, I'm not going to repeat what previous contributors have said very eloquently about our congratulations for you, and also Councillor Leishman's comments about outdoor learning I think are very appropriate as well. It does strike me that an excellent is always really impressive, given that maybe to some extent we've brought two distinct communities together here, that it makes it even more impressive. And I think the legacy, when the communities come together for Riverside Primary, the legacy that the nursery is in such good hands means that moving forward, that those communities, if you like, can come together seamlessly. So well done, thank you very much, and really appreciate you coming along today to speak about your excellent achievements. And as previous contributors have said, if you can take all our congratulations and thanks, that would be really good. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, and I will take all of those comments back to the teams. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, much appreciated. Apologies, I didn't have my microphone on. I'll just repeat that for the sake of the recording. I'm delighted that we've got representatives from the Care Inspectorate along here today to give us a... it's Doreen Fiona online. So yes, Doreen and Fiona online to give us a short presentation from the Care Inspectorate. That would be much appreciated, and thanks very much for coming along, just when you're ready.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having us here today. I'm hoping that we won't have any connectivity issues, but keep fingers crossed. So my name is Doreen Watson. I'm a service manager with responsibility for early learning and childcare inspection, and I share that with one other service manager. And I'm joined today with Fiona Murray, who is the manager of the team that is responsible for the inspections within your area. So she is the font of all knowledge when it comes to Perth and Kinross, which is fantastic. We've been invited along today to talk about our quality framework. Can I have the first slide, please? So this is the image that you'll probably all be familiar with if you've had a look at our quality framework. So we've been using this since June this year, but what I should say about it is that there's nothing that's new in here in terms of how we inspect and what we do. We've always had a framework that we work with, but what we have now is something that's much more transparent for people, so services know exactly what to expect when we come in. And that's sorry, next slide. I'm used to controlling them myself, so I'm going to get a bit. So first of all, and you'll be familiar with this, but if we look at the scope and the reach of early learning and childcare and the numbers of children in early learning and sorry, I thought somebody asked a question. No, okay. So when we look at the numbers of children that are in early learning and childcare settings, and when we talk about early learning and childcare, we're talking right up to school age childcare as well as the nursery age. So we've got over 200,000 children within these services. So it's really important that the provision that children experience is positive and has positive outcomes for them. It was really nice to hear that fantastic praise and encouragement for the services that are obviously delivering really high quality services for your children. So that's a lovely way to start my day. I'm just back from annual leave, so coming back to hear that it's just wonderful. So the shared framework is there to help people recognise what they're doing well, but we hope that not the shared framework, the quality framework is there to help people recognise what they're doing well and give them encouragement and support and help them focus on things that they may need to improve upon. So it's designed in such a way that it should help them recognise actually maybe we're not there yet. Maybe we need to look at this area of our practice and see if we can improve. Next slide, please. So we did a fairly comprehensive consultation, and when we looked at all the responses from that, we looked again at some of the key care and support themes that were arising, and we put a bit more in about that, especially with the expansion, with the longer time children are spending in services. It's really, really important that staff understand how to deliver care without having that task orientated approach. It's really easy in a busy day to get caught up in the I must do this and I must do that, and forget that the child needs to be at the centre of the delivery of care, and it must be really nurturing and supportive for the child. But we absolutely acknowledge and recognise the challenges for the sector, particularly you know, after COVID and all the fantastic work that services have done, keeping families supported across this extraordinarily difficult time. But we do know that with that and expansion, that there is attention needed to some of these areas. And we needed to make sure that children are safe, fundamentally, first and foremost. We want them to have really good quality of care, we want them to experience fantastic outcomes and be achieving, but they need to be safe and well cared for. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we've done, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, is we recognise that there has been an increase in incidents of children leaving services unnoticed by their caregivers, by the staff. And this is something that has always happened in ELC. You would get one or two, it usually happened after the summer break. Children were coming back in after being at home for an extended period. Maybe there'd been renovations and staff weren't as alert to the changes. But what we're seeing now is high numbers of these incidents. So we've developed a campaign to support staff and would strongly encourage all services to be looking at this with their staff and not assume it couldn't happen here, because it can, and it has been. And all of these incidents on the poster, we've had children crawling out of gaps and fences, very, very young children. I think the youngest is about 14 months old. Exactly. It's really, really, fortunately today, no child has been physically harmed. Every child involved in one of these incidents will have experienced emotional distress. So we've had children left behind on outings in play parks, pick-up times, you know, children wandering out when doors are open, gates are open, and children being left on transport. And we've had one of those just in the last couple of weeks. And if you think about the weather that we've had and the heat that we've had, a child left on a bus for a period of time could have devastating consequences. So I can't say this more strongly enough. If you're not aware of this and your staff are not aware of this, please do highlight that to them so that they can have a look and they can just really be sure that they understand and can keep children safe. So so we added that into the framework. One of the other things that we did, can we have the next slide, please, was just strengthen children's rights. So the document itself has always been intended to be a rights-based document, but we didn't expressly mention UNCRC and we didn't expressly mention it in that way. So we did a bit of work with the Children's Parliament. We changed some of the layout of it just to signpost. And obviously we couldn't write out all the articles in full, and there are people that have much greater expertise, as in the Children's Parliament, to explain the articles. So we put the links in and things, and what we want to do is just fundamentally recognise children have rights. And, you know, just to help colleagues in the sector. So we brought all of that into the framework. Sits alongside the health and social care standards. It sits alongside some reflective questioning and things like that. So all designed to be a support and to help colleagues. And we don't expect them to know it all at once, and we don't expect them to be doing it all at once, but hopefully it's designed so that it can be used around staff training and development. Next slide, please. So just to sort of reinforce that this isn't something that's new, our key questions, which you'll see on the left-hand side there, how good is our care, play and learning? Previously in the quality themes that we used to inspect against, that would have been quality of care and support. So fundamentally they all link in. We've got how good is our setting, quality of environment. So it's fairly straightforward. They've been designed in that way to match in with our other frameworks for the other sectors that we regulate, care homes for older people, for example. So there are aspects of it that are similar to that, but of course we've got differences because ELC is unique and has its particular needs as well. So we've tried to reflect how good is our early learning and childcare as well. So it should all be familiar. There should be anything that would be unusual for people looking at this document. Next slide, please. So the composition of the framework, you have your key questions, Alongside that, you have your quality indicators, which have, your key areas that we'll be looking at, the descriptor, the illustrations, and we have gone for an illustration of very good and weak. This reflects, as I say, organisationally what we do as an organisation, but it's also really helpful where services are struggling and they're not there yet. It supports our inspectors as well, to be clear, and if we are in the position where we do, on those few occasions, need to take some form of enforcement, it's really, really helpful to be very clear about here's what's going wrong in this service. But of course, the aim fundamentally is always about improvement. It's always about making sure that children get the best quality experiences. And as I've already touched on, we've got the health and social care standards, the UNCRC articles, and what we call our scrutiny and improvement toolbox. I prefer to drop the scrutiny bit and just call it the improvement toolbox, because it's about, there's lots of open questions in there. How do we know? For example, how do we know our children are safe in this environment? Or, how do we know our staff support positive outcomes, whatever? And it helps them look at, be reflective. They can use them in their staff training days. They can use them just reflectively, just generally. It can be used as part of an induction. So just to kind of get staff really thinking about and focusing on, how do we know we're doing well? And what could we do differently, or what might we need to improve upon? Next slide, please. So that's just, basically that's just the composition of the framework. It's designed in such a way to look at evidence and evaluations from all the key areas. It takes account of factors which might influence the service's capacity to improve. So there might be, changes to staffing, there might be challenges around funding, and I think we can all recognise that we're entering a period of significant challenge when it comes to financial aspects for everyone, but particularly business and the care sector as well. So it's just really the what is our overall capacity for improvement is not a question we inspect against, but it's about, we will take it into account, particularly if we're thinking about, do we need to make requirements here, or actually do we think the service has got that capacity to improve? What other routes might there be to support that improvement? And it's a question really for the service to ask themselves, what is our capacity for improvement? So, okay. Next slide, please. So we decided when we introduced the methodology from June that we would have a standardised approach, which we've always had a standardised approach, but we wanted to be particularly clear. We wanted every service that we inspect to have the same type 1 inspection. So we look at the core quality indicators, which you'll see on your screen there. So we'll be looking at nurturing, care and support. We'll be looking at play and learning. We'll be looking at children experiencing high quality facilities, quality assurance improvement at Ledwell, and staff deployment. Now, originally we thought we would just do staff qualifications, but when we looked at what was happening in the sector in respect of incidents, we thought that this one better covered some of the areas that might point to there being an issue. And we're really keen that when you look at the staffing ones, you see that running through them all is that ethos of teamwork. And I noticed the comment earlier about staff going above and beyond for the children, and you don't get that without a team approach. And it's not about blaming each other if something goes wrong, it's about stepping up and supporting each other to improve. So we're really, really keen to get a really positive ethos in all the services. And I have to say, for the most part, that's what we experience. Obviously, when you're sitting at service manager level, you do get the ones where things are going wrong, and you'll be very familiar with that as well. When things go wrong, that's brought to your attention. But it's nice to hear about the really good quality experiences that are happening as well. So I'm going to hand over to Fiona now. I hope I haven't talked too long, and she's going to take you through the inspection process. Thank you.
Thanks, Doreen.
Thanks, Doreen. If you could move on to the next slide, please. I just need to apologise. I'm keeping my camera off just to help with my connection because it's glitching a little bit for me. So I'll just start telling you a little bit about how we prioritise the inspections that we're going to do. We take account of the intelligence that we hold, And a lot of that is stored in what we call the scrutiny assessment tool. Now that's provider facing, so providers can go in there and see the information that we hold. So we're being very transparent. And on the screen, you can see some of the things that we take into account when we're determining the frequency of the inspections that we'll undertake and where they come within our inspection year. And also that helps us focus on some of the things that we might want to look at when we go out and do an inspection. So if there's been concerns raised about certain issues, that's something that we'd likely want to look at when we went out on inspection, for example. If we can move on to the next slide. So all our inspections of daycare of children's services are unannounced. That really supports us to get a good flavour of what it's actually like for a child at that service. So at the start of the inspection, inspectors will explain the process, the plan for the day, and also the quality indicators they're inspecting against. They'll usually start by having a little chat with the manager, get a feel for what's happening in the service, how things are, but also they'll do a walk around of the service to get a feel for themselves for what's happening in the service. Now, when we're out on inspection, we spend a lot of time observing what it's like for children in that service. And that will include case tracking individual children to follow them through and see what it's like for those children. We also use a tool, it's called SOFI, which is the Short Observational Framework for Inspection. And that's been developed, it's had a lot of research into it and been developed by Bradford University. And it's particularly helpful for people that aren't able to communicate well for themselves. So, you know, particularly helpful for our younger children to find out what it's like for them in the service. We talk to, well, inspectors do like to talk. They talk to a lot of people. They talk to, they'll talk to the children, they'll talk to their families, as well as speaking with staff and the manager. We also look at a range of records and policies, and this really helps us to triangulate our evidence, and all of it feeds into us coming up with what are the actual outcomes for the children at the service, because ultimately we want to know what is it like for a child in that service. The other thing that we really encourage services to do on inspection is to showcase what it is they're doing well. This is their opportunity to shine and really tell us anything they're doing that's maybe a little bit different, anything they're really proud of, anything they're working on. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Now, we assess services, as Dorian has talked about, using the quality framework, and we evaluate those on a 6-point grading scale, with evaluations ranging from unsatisfactory all the way through to excellent. And as Dorian has said, the quality illustrations in the framework are really helpful to support services to see where they fit within that evaluation, but also to support inspectors with that. And the quality framework reflects the health and social care standards, and I'm sure you're all familiar with those. And these really describe what people should experience from a range of care and support services, including early learning and childcare. So they feed together very nicely, and the quality framework really, it's got the clear links to the health and social care standards within it. Now, a lot of the work that we do is really about supporting improvement in services. So we'll do a lot of that maybe quite informally when we're on inspection, maybe talking to them about what other services are doing that are working well. We'll do some signposting to guidance, but we've also developed a range of practice documents to support improvement in the sector. So I've just got a few of those up on the slide that you can see, and these are all available on our hub. We've also got the ELC improvement programme. And so that provides targeted support for services that aren't meeting the quality criteria of the national standards. So they do some more intensive work with those services. But we've also developed a range of resources through the improvement programme that are available on our hub. And a lot of these are bite-sized sessions that are in video format, and the feedback from those have been very positive. People find them very accessible, and they're available to absolutely everybody. We can move on to the last slide. So I appreciate that's been a real quick whistle-stop tour. I think we've maybe just about managed to do it within our 20 minutes. But if you've got any questions, then we'd like to take those. And now we've finished doing the presentation, I'll pop my camera on and hopefully I'll stay with you.
Thank you very much, Fiona and Doreen. That was a whistle-top tour, but I think that was really helpful. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the care inspector at this point, Councillor Shires?
Thank you, Convener. Just to clarify, by the look on officers' faces, that those incidents you reported in the Look, Think, Act campaign were not in Perth and Kinross. That's good to know. I didn't think they were, but was just looking for clarification. But the officers' faces probably told us all we needed to know. I'm particularly interested in, and you talked about the SOFI programme, about how you get opinion from the users of the service, the children that are involved, and get the understanding, but also parents and how feedback from parents and carers is gathered as part of the process. That'd be useful to know. It was really helpful actually to get an understanding of how the process worked. I had not actually appreciated that they were all unannounced.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Doreen and Fiona, I don't know if one or t'other of you want to answer Councillor Shires.
Fiona, do you want to take that one? I mean, I could answer it, but I think you're more up to speed than I am.
So for SOFI, we do quite an in-depth observation on a child over a period of time, so maybe sort of 30 minutes. And it's really broken down into the child's level of engagement, the interactions with the staff. But what we do with the interactions from the staff is we look at it from the child's point of view and how it's impacted on the child. There is quite a lot of detailed research around it, and there's actually quite a bit of information available on Bradford University's website, but I could send Ben a link to some of that information and she could share that if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful, thank you.
And for parents, then we're actually at the moment we're trialling different things. At the moment within Perth and Kinross, we've been trialling MS forms that parents can complete to get some detailed feedback. But inspectors will also speak with parents on inspection, and we do encourage services to let parents know that we're in, so that they're able to come to us if they would like to speak to us. And on our website, there's also an option, as you know, for parents to make complaints if they've got any significant concerns about a service. Although we do try and encourage parents where possible to go directly to the service, because that often resolves things in a better way for them.
Thank you, Fiona.
I think one of the things, could I just add?
Sorry, Doreen, yes, carry on, Doreen. Thank you.
One of the things that we should say as well, with everybody else, we've had challenges around COVID and how we conduct inspections and health and safety that requires us to wear masks at the moment, although we can remove them if we're outside and things like that. So it does create a little barrier. So our inspectors are working really hard to make sure that we can engage with families and engage with the children. And it's been a while since I inspected, but one of the really positive things we used to do was get the children to show us around, share their work with us, take us through their folders and just have that pride in their service. And that gives you so much information about what's happening in that service. So really the children and what's happening for them is central to everything that the inspectors do. It's all leading up to that.
Thank you, Doreen. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Convener. It's really useful actually to have this understanding about the technical methodology, but actually just the practical aspects of what happens when an inspection is carried out, because whilst the reports are excellent, it's getting that kind of behind the scenes understanding. I suppose my final question was about how long an average, if there is such a thing, how long an average inspection takes, and do you just turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning and we're here till we're finished, or what's the kind of format?
You've sort of answered your own question there. There is notional allocated hours for how long an inspection should take, based on the size of the service, the number of children that are attending, the scope and the layout of the premises that you're going to. But actually, any inspection, our inspectors are authorised to take the time that they need to be certain about they've got the right amount of evidence that they need to support their assessment. So because of the pandemic, we've changed some of what we do. We moved some things to virtual and online. So actually what we're finding at the moment is inspections are taking longer because we're back to doing the much more in-depth site visits. So we can be there across a whole day. We might be across more than one day, depending. But we also do interviews and things virtually with staff, with managers. We'll chat to parents as well, if that's an accessible way to do it. So it is taking a bit longer. We're doing some work at the moment as an organisation to look at the time needed to inspect and what actually is an inspection and what actually do we do, so that we can be sure that we have the right resource, so that we are resourced well, so that we can continue to do the work that we do. And that will help. So we're looking then at how long, every time an inspector does an inspection, they note the time. So there's times noted for travel, there's times noted for how long in the service, for any improvement. And that's a really sticky one because everything about inspection is improvement work. But staff might also do a bit of distinct improvement work when they're out there. And it might just be about signposting, it might be taking the manager around and showing them something specific that would help. So we track all of that, so we're auditing all of that, and we'll be looking at how long, but basically it takes as long as is needed for us to be absolutely sure. And after an inspection, and this is a bit, and if you haven't had any services that have been performing not so well, you won't be familiar with this, but inspection in of itself is a one-off activity. But from that, our inspectors will engage with a service out with inspection. They might go back and do improvement work with them. That might happen over a number of different meetings, sessions. So it's actually quite a broad scope that our team have. It's not just we visit once and that's the end of it. We try and keep that relationship, and we really encourage people to get in touch with us if they've got questions and things. And we want to make sure that when we do come out, although people are going to be nervous, of course they are, we all are, if somebody's scrutinising what we're doing, we actually want to work really well with services, because if they're able to talk to us confidently, we're going to be able to support them much better. So I'm going off a little bit, down a wee meander there, so sorry, but basically we'll take as long as it is necessary to do the inspection. But the inspectors should be letting the service know so they won't be sort of thinking, are they going to be here 3 weeks? No, it should be completed within 5 consecutive days at the longest, but it might vary if there is, if there are issues coming up. So I'm going to stop talking now, sorry.
Thank you, Doreen. No apologies required for the meandering. It was interesting meandering for what it's worth, so no apologies required.
Could I just come in there, please?
Of course, Fiona.
I was just going to say that in Perth and Kinross, like a lot of local authority areas, since the expansion, you've got a number of very large services, sort of maybe for 100, 120 children. So for your larger services, then we might have, say, 2 or sometimes even 3 inspectors going in. And because otherwise the inspectors feel like they're moving in and would be there for the best part of a week if they did it themselves. So we do that. But the other thing that we've done in Perth and Kinross is you've got 3 inspectors, Claire, Lindsay and Jenny, and they will be at virtually every inspection. It would be very unusual for somebody not, one of those 3 inspectors not to be at an inspection. And that's really good because we've built up very good relationships with Ben's team. And so that makes really good information sharing between us and Ben's team as well, which can then help support improvement because we can feed things into Ben's team as well.
Thank you, Fiona. I think what we'll do now, just before we let you go, I don't know if any members have any comments to make about what we've heard this morning. I know I do, but if any members want to go first, that would be good. Councillor Shars.
I feel like I'm taking on the Willie Wilson role now, which is kind of worrying.
No comment.
Mercifully, as a lot of people will not know what that means, but others do. No, I found that really helpful.
You're not. Carry
Phew.
on.
I find that really helpful, and I hope that maybe we can give this to Education Scotland to encourage them that why it is we want to hear more about the process, because whilst those of us that go into schools and nurseries and engage with children, we kind of know what the process is like. Actually hearing it from those who carry out the inspections is really helpful, and I know that Ben and Sharon and their teams are doing a really good job, and that just kind of reinforces it, and we want to work together to strive to make everything as good as it possibly can be. And I remember sitting in this room when we had the initial discussion about 1140 and thinking, oh my goodness, how on earth is that going to be delivered? And it has been, but the inspection aspect of that is really important, that parents and carers can know with confidence that their children are being well looked after.
Absolutely, Councillor Shires, and thank you. A couple of brief observations that I had, and it's genuinely been really interesting. I know when I was chair of the parent council of my kids' primary school, that they had an inspection, and I know senior staff were not worried, but certainly apprehensive before it, but it was a really positive experience for them. They came out feeling very proud of the school, and there was, in the areas that did improve, there was subsequent improvement, and it was an improvement, and it was a positive experience for them. And what you've said this morning just kind of reinforces that. And I also know that excellence does come from teamwork, as you pointed out, and I think that's why we're really genuine in our comments for Annie this morning, because we all know that excellence has come from teamwork. And again, it was just nice that you've reinforced that. Childcare expansion has been a huge challenge. It's been an appropriate thing to do. It's been a positive thing to do, but it has brought challenges, as Councillor Shire says, and so it's really important that we oversee that challenge and make sure that it's being delivered appropriately. But it was also really encouraging to hear from your presentation this morning that it's not just about inspection, it's not just about a heavy hand. There is an emphasis on improvement, and I think that's really encouraging and good to know. And I think you're right that the welfare of children has to be at the centre of all we do, and I think that came across this morning as well. So thanks very much for taking the time to come along today. That was, I've said it before, but I'll say it again, that was really helpful and useful and interesting. So thanks very much again, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. We'll disappear now and let you get on with the rest of your meeting. Thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again, much appreciated.
Bye.
Thanks everyone. We'll move on to item 6. Just before we do, I think it might be appropriate at this stage just to welcome Nancy Helm, Paul Edwards, Don Evans, and of course Linda Richards to the meeting just for the last 3 items. So thanks very much for coming along today. And I think again, Sharon, you're going to say a few words about the summary report on Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland inspections is what I'm trying to say. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, this is a summary report which provides a summary of PKC performance over the past 2 years in all inspections. So that's by the Care Inspectorate and by Education Scotland, and it's the inspections of all services in relation to education, but also in support and residential care services. So this report was considered at Scrutiny Committee on the 25th of April, and so therefore it's already been through a committee process. But areas to bring to attention for this committee would be that sections 4 to 7 of the report just details the inspection process for Education Scotland and for the Care Inspectorate, and just explains the quality improvement themes that the inspection processes deal with. It also summarises, I suppose, the work that we have done over the last 2 years. So section 6 contains the information around Woodley Cottage. So as well as education settings, I would just draw members' attention to the fact that section 6 does have a section in here, and we're delighted that Linda's here as well, should there be any questions around that. One more thing to note for members in this report, and given Councillor Shire's earlier discussions about the importance of ensuring quality and particularly through the pandemic. We know that Education Scotland were not able to undertake formal inspections, although they did do some thematic reviews, and they're noted within this report, but also draw members' attention to section 7.7 of the report, which details the activity that we as an education service undertook to ensure the quality of the provision in schools and early education settings. And it just details the work that our quality improvement officers and service managers undertook along with our head teachers to ensure that standards and quality reports were continued, school improvement plans were continued, and support for staff and children and young people continued throughout the 2 years that we've been discussing. So appendices A to E, and there are a number of appendices, and we can thank Paul Davidson for those, and Paul is also here online should there be any questions around that, but they summarise the performance of all settings inspected over this period of time, and it also supports us with some national data and comparator local authority data within Perth and Kinross. And so overall, I think the report presents a really strong performance from PKC, and it does in fact deal with some of the dips that we have mentioned previously and some of the care inspectorate quality themes and how those have improved over time, and we are now in a very good position, and the appendix at the end just explains where we are in terms of our performance within PKC, national performance, and our comparator authorities. So Paul Davidson is online, Linda is here as well to take any questions on the residential and support for children, and then of course Bernadette and myself are here to answer any questions around the education appendices. Thanks, convener.
Thank you, Shan. Just before I invite questions, I would just like to thank Paul as well for the way the appendices are put together. I can largely understand them myself, so they must be good. That's all I'm saying. But any questions from the committee? I don't think we have any questions, so that's fine. Any comments for the committee? Councillor Shires.
Thank officers for the report. It is really very clear. Definitely been on an improvement journey ourselves on the way that we present data, so it is easy to understand. And I suppose it's just I suppose a question actually is an opportunity going to be made available to new councillors to go and visit the cottage. The name's gone from my head. I think sitting in front of me, because I think unless I certainly benefited from the opportunity to go and see the service myself, and that might be something that'd be helpful. I
couldn't agree more, and I'll answer that. I had opportunities to visit a variety of the establishments actually as a new councillor, and they were really invaluable. So if you can note that, Danny, I think that's absolutely something that we would love to do, particularly for the Learning and Families Committee, but actually for all the councillors, particularly the new ones. I think that's a great idea. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And just a comment about the data is the commitment of all elected members and officers to strive for those excellence. You know, in comparison to our other comparator local authorities is something that I'm sure we'll all strive to ensure that is achieved over the next 5-year period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Any other comment? I would just like to add to what Councillor Shires has said. I think it does reflect a strong performance, and I think notwithstanding legitimate scrutiny, that's quite right and appropriate. I think the collegiate way that we do work together as elected members and as a council generally, I think that goes a long way towards the strong performance. But of course, ultimately, it's down to staff, and it's down to all the staff. And yeah, as somebody who's been involved in the Learning and Families or Lifelong Learning Committee as it was, it actually makes you really proud actually that. And it's not us as elected members that do that, it's you guys, and it's really appreciated. It is a strong performance. I think particularly the work that goes on in Woodlea is a real lifesaver for families when they're sometimes at their lowest ebb. And again, we do appreciate that across the board, and if if you can please genuinely take our thanks or appreciation back to your team. It goes back again to excellence only comes from teamwork, and it is appreciated for what it's worth. Thank you. Linda, thank you. Thank you, Linda.
Okay, so to carry on that theme of being extremely proud, I'm sitting here before you today as an extremely proud service manager, bringing forward these 3 inspection reports. Firstly, I'll introduce who I've brought with me and why they're here. So Dawn Miller, who's sitting next to me, is the Improvement Officer who is overseeing fostering adoption and Woodley Cottage. So she will obviously take some of the grateful comments back as well to the staff there. Dawn's here instead of Claire Murray, who is luckily for her away on her honeymoon and is a team leader of the adoption team. Next is Paul Edwards, who is the team leader of the Through Care Aftercare team, but is here today as he is also the registered manager for the adult placement service within Perth and Kinross, part of this inspection. And lastly, I've got Nancy Helm, who's the team leader of the fostering and kinship care team. So all 3 are new to this process and and new to Perth and Kinross, which is just one of the challenges that we've faced since the last inspection. The care inspectorate were last looking at all of the fostering and adoption service in 2017. So during that time, 5 years has been a great deal of change, not only with the leadership within the service, but obviously we have gone through a pandemic which has had an impact on all of our services. For the adoption team, it has slowed down the permanence planning processes for children, young people as courts closed and reprioritised other things. For our fostering service, there was an increased demand on our carers, who struggled not only to manage having children at home 24/7 without any of the supports normally would be around for them, but also the increased complexity of the children who they were being asked to look after. For our adult placement service, this is our first inspection, so I'm equally more proud of the fact that what we have got is really positive feedback, because this service was set up during the pandemic. There are many challenges facing us at the moment in all 3 services. The recovery has been, it continues. We had our second foster carer get together on Saturday at Active Kids as we celebrated our summer picnic with our foster carers and our foster children. And all the carers were saying to me that they wanted to get back to lots more face-to-face support. And getting the support groups up and running again. All of these things have been gradual in coming back together for obvious reasons. Our national recruitment is now known to be causing some cause for concern at Scottish Government level. Foster carers are becoming more and more tired, have retired, and also are challenged with the complexity of the children they're looking after. We have bucked the trend in Perth and Kinross, and part of that is down to the good reputation of our staff and the team that support our carers. We continue to recruit, one of the few local authorities that are continuing to do that at the moment. And the amount of families that have recruited and the supported lodging spaces, as Paul will talk about, is incredible. We also, Paul's team are taking forward our commitment, Perth and Kinross Council's obligation in the National Transfer Rota for unaccompanied asylum seeking children. And we have managed always to find a placement. We were leading in terms of voluntarily joining that rota prior to it becoming mandatory. We have always managed to take our share of the children that are coming through that route. Our latest challenge is obviously the new amendment to the immigration legislation under the Homes for Ukraine scheme, which means that under 18s can come to Scotland unaccompanied. And Nancy's team are dealing with this challenge and will take forward our commitment to supporting those children, young people that come through that scheme by assessing the carers that are coming forward for them. All of this is set against a background of what we all recognise is the emotional health and mental well-being that's facing some of our children and young people. Those children and young people are coming into our foster care placements. We have seen an increase in that complexity, but we've also seen a rise in the support that is offered to these children and young people from our carers who have been undaunting in the support. So I cannot commend enough to you the fantastic carer group that we have in Perth and Kinross, both in terms of our foster carers, our kinship carers, our adoptive parents and our supported lodgings providers. And I'll pass over now to my colleagues who will give you a wee bit more just about the individual reports.
Thank you, Linda.
Looks like I'm going first. Yeah, I just want to say I'm obviously here in place of Claire, and I'm very lucky that I joined PKC just over a year ago, and I've came into fantastic teams that were already in place. So I will not take much credit for this because this is definitely kind of on Claire and the teams. But for the adoption team, I think we've been very lucky, as Linda says. Perth Kinross have actually been one of the local authorities who've continued to recruit, and we've continued to have adoptive families come forward to look after our children. The amount of children has slowed down significantly, and that's partly due to our family group decision making, where we're looking at whether family options for unborn babies and new babies are actually a better option than going into foster care and then moving through the adoption service. There was significant slowdown in legal processes during lockdown, but we have had 3 adoptions granted in the last 4 weeks, which is excellent news for our children and for our adopters as well. The kind of process feels like it's starting to move again. We have fantastic support to our adopters, so I'm going foster care because that was my previous role. Fantastic support from the team to our adopters, and one of the key things is around our family change service, which sits alongside the adoption service, which is the therapeutic service, and all adopters are offered a consultation when they're newly approved. So we're looking at the mental health of children and adults from that very kind of starting point to make sure we can support children the best we can through their journey. We also offer a lot of post-adoption support. So with the move to kind of really supporting sibling contact, post-adoption contact, so our post-adoption support is increasing, and we're continually looking to see how we can do that better and how we can better support children to keep links throughout their childhood. We also had our summer activity, which is the first one post-pandemic, and the adopters really appreciated getting together with the staff team, but also seeing other adopters and seeing kind of other people's journeys and how people are getting on. Our adoption team is very different to a lot of other local authorities in that we also have the childcare workers sitting within our team. So there's very close links between the adoptive workers and the childcare workers to make sure they work collaboratively together and progress children's plans as swiftly and seamlessly as they can, and they can then be involved with that as a longer transition period as well. From the report, we didn't have any areas for improvement, but we worked very closely with the other 2 services to look at how do we improve all of our registered services and how can we increase kind of our connectivity between the services and ensure that we're looking at the child as a whole and a holistic kind of viewpoint moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. If I got your second name wrong earlier, I apologise for that as well, but thanks for that. That's greatly appreciated. Paul.
Hi, yeah, I'm Paul Edwards. I'm the team leader and registered manager with adult placement, the adult placement scheme. I think for us, as Linda was saying, this is a really positive outcome for us, especially that we've only been registered since December 2020. However, prior to that, we've always been trying to find good accommodation options for care leavers and for unaccompanied asylum seekers to ensure that they've got they're living in safe, nurturing environments. So for us, I think for the positive outcome, this I think is testament to the team we have, for the staff we have, who've got a lot of enthusiasm and commitment towards creating something, to recruiting, to kind of assessing and getting carers on board. For the adult placement side of it, the adult placement scheme, that encompasses supported lodgings, host families, which we've set up for unaccompanied asylum seekers, but also the continuing care, which is for those young people that are encouraged to stay in care placements for longer periods, because obviously the evidence around that is just really good positive outcomes if they stay in the same placement they've been in for years. So the team around that done really well to support the staff, the carers and young people to do that. So from us, the positive bit for us is we've got really good feedback from carers and for young people that felt really well supported within this. The only improvements around for us were, I think, is more about processes, because like we've only been registered for a couple of years, so we kind of sharpened up on the side of for the assessments and for approval panels. But that's where we are at the moment. So yeah, it's just about kind of improving from here. We've just employed another staff member to the scheme, so that is more in line with, as Linda was saying, we've got the national transfer scheme. We signed up to that, so we need to ensure that we've got host families ready. So we get the phone call, email saying we have to be prepared to have somebody. So there's constant recruiting for host families. So yeah, doing really well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Nancy?
Thank you. Just to reiterate what Paul said, we were really pleased with the feedback from the inspectors, in particular the feedback from our carers, to confirm that the support that we have been offering them recently has been the right type of support. We've worked really hard in consulting with our carers to make sure that the pre-COVID support arrangements that we had in place were still those types of arrangements that they wanted post-COVID. I'm saying post-COVID, I'm hoping it's not going to come back with a vengeance. But we've been supporting our carers and the children that they look after and care for to recover from the COVID and the restrictions. One of the things that we've worked really hard is that consultation, getting as much things back to face as we can. We've done that sort of using our own risk assessments, but now I think we're pretty much there with our support groups. What we have at the moment is face-to-face support groups looking and identifying at pressure areas, looking at the teenage years, making sure that we're looking at supports that are individualised for those carers, also our baby support. So our next step after that is to look at the locality working to make sure that we're offering geographical support, because it's different for our carers in Aberfeldy than it is for our carers that are Perth City. So yeah, we're working really hard on those areas. What our carers are saying to us is that the support that we provide them with is excellent support, but some of the best support that they get are from each other, and that certainly played out in the summer picnic that John referred to earlier on, and Linda referred to, where carers are just really pleased to see each other. The children are really pleased to see other children of a similar age, and are also in foster care, so sort of normalising some of those bits for the children. Our training, we've again, a lot of the hybrid work in relation to training has suited some of our carers, particularly if they are sort of Kirriemuir, Aberfeldy, where they're able to access our training supports. But some carers really like that face-to-face support. What was identified through the inspection report, which was an area of development for ourselves already, was about focusing on trauma-based practice and support for our carers. So we had an event last week where we had targeted training from Kate Cairns with our foster carers, and then a day for the supervising social workers, again focusing on the impact on the COVID restrictions for our children in foster care, and to make sure that
the supports that we're offering is evidence-based in relation to the supports. So yeah, we've had quite a tough year, but I think that we've worked really hard in making sure that we get back to as much normality as we possibly can. The recruitment part, I would just finally say that we have been bucking the trend, and we've got 6 households going through assessment at the moment, and our Skills to Foster introduction programme, again, we're doing face-to-face, and we had 4 families come forward specifically initially to offer placements for children from the Ukraine, but 2 of those households are actually saying that they've been thinking about foster care for quite a while. So they're actually coming forward to be foster carers, not just for children from the Ukraine, but for children across the board, which was really welcomed. It was certainly very welcome from ourselves in relation to the fostering numbers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nancy. It's really nice to hear all these positive stories for what I know is a really challenging service some of the time. So thanks very much, everyone. Councillor Leeson, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, convener. I would say to the ladies and the gent here as well, sitting on the benches with me, as a new councillor, I'm finding it fascinating. I'm delighted to be getting these experiences from experts in your field, so thanks very much for that today. And hearing so much positivity is absolutely fantastic. I would commend the staff wholeheartedly. I can only imagine that your job is incredibly stressful, but also obviously massively rewarding. So the question I've got really is, what kind of support is available for, we've heard for carers and for the children and the young adults, what sort of support is available for council staff? Because I can only imagine the pressures that you're under, and I imagine they've been exacerbated by the pandemic the last couple of years.
Thank you, Councillor Leeson. I think that's a great question, actually.
Yeah, and I'll come back and answer that question. We have got a really extremely supportive staff framework, I suppose is what you would call. So in terms of our teams, there is absolutely no doubt that working from home has not helped in terms of some of the staff supports that have been around. But what I will say is that we are all there for each other. So there is certainly no I in team in our part of the service. What I will say is that I think what we've got is a range of expertise, as you've heard, from different people come from different backgrounds. We've got a formal staff supervision policy which ensures that staff have time with their individual line manager on a regular basis. And we also have regular team meetings which allows for staff to speak together and talk through any of the kind of difficulties that they are having. What I will say is that I think some of the trauma that we see hits us in different ways. So sometimes you go along thinking I'm okay and this is fine, and then there's one child's story that has an impact on you that maybe is not the same as another child, and that's when we use the supports round about us. I think what we've got in Perth and Kinross is a very stable staff group who know each other very well, and can go along and speak to each other and kind of know when people are struggling a wee bit. So I think, and I suppose I hope my staff would agree with me, that we're well supported and we support each other.
Thanks very much, Linda. I think there is a very serious point to that. I think we as a council do have a big responsibility to care for our carers, and I think we're all very well aware of that. So thanks for your answer to what was a very good question. Brian.
Thank you again, convener, and thank you, Linda. No one was making faces behind your back there anyway. So no, I think again, as I said, I'm still very, very new. I'm in my first few months here, but certainly the conversations I've had with you and other officers as well, you can see it's a closely knit team, and again, credit to you all.
Thanks, Brian. Councillor Barrett, you have a question, please.
I do, thank you, convener. These are excellent reports, and many thanks, as Brian said, to you and all your teams for all that you're doing and achieving in the face of so many challenges. And I'm really glad to hear that you're all looking out for each other as well. I did have a question about the gap on post-adoption support, but Dawn's reassured us on that one. Could I just ask for confirmation that the comment on individual risk assessments and safe caring plans as a potential area needing attention, if that's been picked up in the process work that you referred to? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Barrett. And yes, it has. These were processes that had probably been less adhered to during the pandemic, but more adhered to in terms of less adhered to in the written form, but more adhered to in the talking form. So it's just about ensuring that we've got that whole risk assessment round about these kind of safer caring processes written down and put as part of the care plan rather than just discussed within the teams round the child.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Thank you, Linda. Can I invite comments on these inspection reports now, please? Councillor Shires.
Thank you, convener. Well, anytime Linda's in front of us, we know that we're going to get some good reports, and we've got some excellent ones today, Linda. So, and I think, I mean, that could be taken as a flippant comment, but actually we know that, you know, the journey that your service has been on, the challenges that you've faced, and, you know, you referred to a number of the, your colleagues talked about the complexities that, you know, young people and children have experienced, not least over the last 2 years, and probably made a lot worse by the last couple of years. So absolutely fantastic reports, and we're very grateful for all that you do. And I suppose the challenge to us is, you know, as budgets tighten, is making sure that the commitment to support the work that is done so that we do continue to buck national trends, that, you know, that financial support to keep these services going the way they are and improving is put in place, and that's a challenge for us as elected members as we move forward. Thank you.
I think you're spot on with that, Councillor Shires. Comments from anyone else? If there's not, I would just like to echo what Councillor Shires has said. Really, I know that you had a fair degree of transformation pre-COVID as well, and following pretty much straight on from that, COVID's come around, and I think there will be a negative legacy from COVID across the services, but particularly with you guys, it's yet another challenge that you're having to overcome. But you overcome all these challenges in difficult circumstances remarkably well. So again, it sounds really flippant, but I think across the chamber we all really are genuine in our appreciation of what you guys do, particularly given the challenging nature of all your services. So I hope you continue to buck the recruitment challenge as well, and without being flippant, keep up the good work. It is appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all the supportive comments. Thank you.
We'll move on to the last item now, which is the Collaborative Improvement Programme, and Sharon is going to say a few words, please. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Yes, I'd like to introduce this report. This is a report about a collaborative improvement programme that the Education Service took part in between November and December of 2021. This is a new approach to securing improvement within education authorities through shared work between local authorities and between Education Scotland and between ADES, which is the Association of Directors of Education for Scotland. So the report seeks to describe the process undertaken in Perth and Kinross to summarise the key findings for us as a local authority, and also to outline the steps we're taking as a result of that process. The collaborative improvement is a new approach to bringing about improvement and is now being undertaken across all 32 local authorities in Scotland, but within Perth and Kinross we were the third local authority to participate, so we're obviously part of that learning process. So this report is provided here at Executive Subcommittee for noting, but it will also be shared with ADES and with Education Scotland as part of the national learning from this approach. You'll see from the report and the appendices that what we undertook was a fairly significant piece of work with 3 other local authorities alongside a core team of officers from Education Scotland and from ADES, and it was based very much on our own self-evaluation and inclusive practice. As you know, as a committee, you're well versed with the fact that within Perth and Kinross we're really focused on improving inclusion within Perth and Kinross. The key focus for this piece of work was about looking very strategically at the support that we provide both within schools and as a local education authority for children and young people with social, emotional and behavioural needs, and particularly within our secondary schools. So we undertook, that whole process of collaboration with other local authorities. We looked outwards at what other local authorities were doing, both within their schools, but also in terms of their strategic planning and how they were looking at their allocation of resources. And we gained valuable information from that process. So the report is there, and the plan is also there as an appendix, and I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Any questions, Councillor Shires?
I was really interested in reading the report, and I wondered how that all sits with the Tayside Regional Improvement Collaborative, because it seemed like, I would have thought that work would have sat underneath that, and it doesn't, from what I can work out, but maybe I'm wrong. And is there a danger of, the Regional Improvement Collaborative set up to do a function, and then is this another sort of piece of work it just seemed to me that was quite maybe duplication, or that there was a move away from the trick, or I wasn't very sure.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. This is part of the same national perspective about collaboration across local authorities to secure improvement, and you'll see the reference to some of the national agreements in here, the joint agreement and the OECD report, and indeed the Audit Scotland report about improving outcomes for children and young people. And we've often talked about the TRIC, the Regional Improvement Collaboratives, having a very specific focus, which is a geographical focus about sharing commonalities. But what we're also keen to do is not to restrict our collaboration to just our geographical area. So this process is about securing improvement across a local authority, not as a regional improvement collaborative. So it was very much focused on PKC, and therefore we had the opportunity to collaborate with people in other local authorities who had similar difficulties or challenges or wicked issues to deal with, and so therefore they are separate, but the collaboration and the wish for ADES and from Education Scotland for us as a local authority to collaborate across the piece, depending on what the issues are, follows this theme through.
Thank you, Sharon. Any further questions? Councillor Barrett, I think you have a question. So.
Thank you, Convener. I have a couple of questions about clarification, Sharon, just things I don't understand being relatively new councillor, and then just a more substantive one. On page 96, the reference, and you used it just now, to wicked issues, and on page 98, just wondering what Create a Perth and Kinross senior phase offer to complement learner pathways offered at individual schools. Just if you can clarify what those two expressions mean, please.
So first of all, an apology, Councillor Barrett. We do try so hard not to get into our jargon, but we often fail, so I do apologise for that. When we talk about wicked issues, it's a term that we use quite a lot to describe a challenge that is stubborn, persistent, difficult to move, something that's not going to be done very quickly, and so therefore when we talked about the wicked issues that we were dealing with in Perth and Kinross, it is that support for those young people who have social, emotional and behavioural needs within our secondary setting, for whom a mainstream experience is not, in fact, meeting all of their needs. And that is a problem that is felt nationally across the piece. And as we've been discussing in this committee, the pandemic has, right from the word from early years, and you've heard the Care Inspectorate talking about some of the challenges around very young children, you know, coming back into a setting and settling down, and that is replicated right the way across the piece and into our young people as well. So that's what would be described as a wicked issue. It's something that we're going to have to put lots of time and energy and effort into solving, and it's not going to be easy, and the best way of doing that is to learn from others and to work with others to do that. In relation to the learner pathways in terms of senior phase, that's part of the work that we've identified needs to happen within our schools. So for children and young people who have got quite significant and complex social and emotional and behavioural needs, sometimes the traditional pathways that we have in our schools are not meeting those children's needs. We're very keen to look at different ways that we can engage our young people in learning, and it is in the spirit of Curriculum for Excellence that we learn in different ways, and anytime, anywhere learning has certainly been something that some of our young people actually benefited from through the pandemic, and coming back to the restrictions of a school have not in fact been terribly successful for some of them. So we're looking at different pathways, and one of the main areas of work that will be taking place and is taking place is to look at our curricular offer for our senior phase pupils. We've got many more young people staying on in school at this point in time, and our old traditional methods of delivering a senior phase curriculum for those young people is just not appropriate. So we're working with partners across the piece to look at how we widen that out and make sure that every young person achieves success. So there will be some further information across the year as we move further into that programme, but ideally it's about transforming our curricular offer for those young people in our secondary schools.
Thank you, Shan. Councillor Barrett.
So that's kind of taking the best practice you've picked up through the CIP and also what's been going on in some of the individual schools that have been referred to, and kind of putting together a toolkit that can be used across Perth and Kinross schools. Is that right?
Yes, it is. So one of the things that we're doing, and is going to be a real focus for us in terms of our quality assurance this year, is a validated self-evaluation exercise within every secondary school this year. What that will do is that will allow us to really look and focus at the strengths of each individual school offer for these young people, and also for the areas for improvement. But what we were also doing is looking at, as a local authority and as an education authority, what do we provide when schools need extra help to deliver that pathway? And so that's the piece of work that is being referred to here, that as a local authority, we are going to look at all of the themes coming across all of our secondary schools, and looking to consider that as an education authority, we could perhaps provide more across all schools to support when schools' resources need to be bolstered up.
Thank you, that's really helpful. And just my other question was, I just wondered if there were any other plans for any further collaborative improvement programmes?
We probably collaborate more often than we don't, but in terms of a formal programme, no. What we are doing is we're probably now going to be contributing to the collaborations across other local authorities. So in fact, I was asked to join another programme today, but it decided to decline because we had committee. But some of the Perth and Kinross staff who are working on this will be sharing those experiences across other local authorities as the year moves on.
Thanks very much, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Can I invite you to comment on the SIP now, please? All good. I would just briefly like to comment. I think the inclusion part of the collaborative improvement programme is really important. I think inclusion is the right thing to do for social cohesion, actually, but I welcome this report because it's incumbent upon us as elected members that we support inclusion, not just with resource, but also in terms of trying to set the appropriate culture for that. And so I think this is really important, and I welcome it. So thanks very much. Just before we we finish off, just a couple of comments I'd like to make. I think Councillor Shires, I think it's right. I think we will support officers' efforts to get Education Scotland to this committee. I think that was genuinely really helpful. The Care Inspectorate's presentation today, I really enjoyed that, and I think if we can do similar for Education Scotland, that'd be a good thing. So we'll try and support efforts to get them here. And secondly, just before we finish, really appreciate our guests coming along today. As elected members, we read stuff all the time, and we try to be as informed as possible, but it's really important that we hear from the coal face, as it were. That sounds cliched, but it is actually true. But I know that you're busy people, so it's really appreciated that you came along today to share your experiences. Thank you. Thanks very much. I think we're done, so thank you very much everybody for coming along, and much appreciated. Thank you.